Good morning. I'm Matt Reinhard, Chair of your Snohomish County YMCA. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to the inaugural YMCA of Snohomish County Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Inspirational Event. Well, we had to adapt the celebration this year, and we hope that next year we'll be able to hold this powerful event in person. We're grateful that you were still able to join us this morning as we come together as a community and remember the great work and teachings of Dr. Martin Luther King. On behalf of the YMCA of Snohomish County, thank you for joining us for this celebration. We are proud to be hosting this important event that honors the life and legacy of Dr. King and to support the vital work happening in the YMCA in Snohomish County. Now I'd like to thank our sponsor, Coastal Community Bank. Not only are they our inaugural sponsor, they're a dear friend and trusted friend to the YMCA. Lastly, before we hear from the first of our great speaker lineup, in honor of Dr. King's vision and in respect to our first speaker and his people, we humbly acknowledge that the land on which today's meeting is taking place is the territory of the people of the Salish Sea. Their presence has been imbued in the waterways, shorelines, valleys, and mountains of these traditional homelands of the Coast Salish people since time immemorial. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and also honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water where we live and work. Now, it's my privilege to introduce Mr. Mel Sheldon, Tribal Elder, Tulalip Tribe.
Mel Sheldon, Tulalip Tribal Council. First of all, I want to welcome everybody and thank everybody for being here to the celebration of Dr. King and all of his body of work through the years. I, as a young man, remember Dr. King in junior high and high school for the challenges that he faced and the battles that he led. And it made a big impression on me because when I think about our Afro-American challenges that he led the fight on, tribal people, Indian people faced the same thing. And we worked in concert together to work on civil rights, voting rights, and other such things. That's why Dr. King is such a darn hero for me as a person who's fought the battles, who led the way. He led by example. And I raise my hands to him in the Stohoe way. We say, thank you, Dr. King, for the work that you've done to inspire us, to help us as we journey forward today, the battles that we fight for voting, for civil rights, just for a better life together. And Dr. King has been a great example for that. When I think about our elders, I think of other people who also led the fight. I want to thank our tribal elders who stepped up along with Dr. King, and also for their tribal elders who saw value in a relationship with the YMCA. I've talked to a number of our elders who went to the YMCA as young men and women, and they cherish those memories, the camaraderie, a place to go, a safe place to go. And that is today, as we have our relationship with the YMCA, our kids get to come to the YMCA, experience the activities, the friendships that they can make, and a better way of life that will give them memories into the future. So today, as we come together, I want to say thank you very much for your time and the work that we're all doing together for a better quality of life. And the YMCA is leading that charge. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Osiem Haishka.
Introduce myself. I'm Dr. Janice Green. I'm with the Snohomish County NAACP and actually do other things in the community as well. So I'm a longtime community activist and community supporter. I'd like to offer a prayer for this day and beyond. So I start with the prayer. Holy Father, I pray for unity in my community, and that I and others join together as instruments of your peace and as doers of your will, that our eyes are open so we can see, and that our ears are open so that we can hear, that our hearts are open so we empathize. Father, I pray that the destructiveness of hate be cut out of our hearts, that the roots of bitterness fail to take roots in our spirits. And where there is bitterness already rooted, that it does not thrive. Please let animosity be replaced with kindness and compassion, and that we are able to work together to lift up our community and take care of each other. I pray for a spirit of cooperation, that we come together to conquer the issues that affect us all, that we stand together to face challenges of the pandemic, of homelessness, racism, and other troubles that harm us or pull us apart. That we create a way that we can each bring our life experiences, our talents, and our expertise to the table to work side by side to develop solutions. Lord, we need your mercy and your grace. I pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Now I'd like to say a little bit about the YMCA and its history in the community. I worked a long time with the YMCA. I have actually been on their equity board at one time and worked closely with JJ with the Minority Achievers Program. Many of you may remember the Minority Achievers Program. One of the things I loved about this work is that we were able to reach young people. We were able to help them with identity. We were able to help them with solutions to their problems, education. The program was at the schools, and these young people received extra tutoring, extra help if they needed it. And not only that, they had role models that based their, role models that would help them, and they could base their lives or help their lives along. I have been in the community, as I said, for a very long time, and that was one of the best programs that I think the Y had. I understand that it's reviving, and I hope to work closely with the Y on that program where we take youth of color and make sure that they have opportunities and that they have visibility. In this day and age, I think that even above that, that the Y has a place where these kids can come. I know that it's open and that you've done enough with young people, with education. And there goes my phone, of course. Anyway, so thank you. I just appreciate the fact that the Y is here and working with us.
Everybody, thank you for allowing me to join you as we celebrate the 93rd birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Yesterday, I was reading the speech that Dr. King delivered 54 years ago on April 3rd, 1968, to an overflowing crowd the night before he was killed in Memphis, Tennessee, several months after his 39th birthday. Dr. King said, and I quote, "We've got some difficult days ahead. After the year we experienced in 2020, with social unrest, economic uncertainty, and the worst wildfire season ever, I was pleased that 2021 was slightly better. I hope that our difficult days are behind us. I hope this weekend and the rest of the year is a prosperous time for you, your family, and your friends." For me, the week leading up to this day has been wonderful. I watched 3 movies this week. I watched the movie Selma for about the 25th time, and it's about the struggles Blacks endured for civil rights. I watched the movie 42 about Jackie Robinson integrating Major League Baseball. And I took the time to watch Hidden Figures, the struggles Black women experienced to gain equality. And I finished reading Walking in the Wind by Georgia Congressman John Lewis. I watched those movies and read Congressman Lewis's book because wherever I go in this world, whatever I do, I don't want to forget about the broad shoulders I get to stand on every day of my life. I'm standing on the shoulders of Congressman John Lewis, Jackie Robinson, my grandmother, Elsie Lee Lovick, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. One of my favorite scenes in the movie Selma was when a young man by the name of John Lewis was getting some advice from Dr. King. Advice that would serve us well today. Dr. King gave us some wonderful advice during his short life. As I was watching Selma, I wondered, what advice would Dr. King give us today? What would Dr. King say to us to help us live in peace? What would he say to persuade us to spend time getting to know one another? Not just at events like this. Spend time talking to each other and not at each other. With everything that is going on in our world today, a global pandemic, social unrest, a fair amount of disillusionment, distrust, and cynicism. You may recall what happened just over a year ago on January 6th, 2021, the deadly siege of our nation's capital. There is a lot of anger, hatred, bitterness, and fear in our country. What would Dr. King say to us to help us lose the hate, lose the bitterness, the anger, and come to terms with our fears? How would Dr. King show us how to disarm hate? As a young boy growing up in segregated Louisiana, I had a lot of hatred, anger, and bitterness in my heart. The kind of bitterness that could easily have led me in a different direction. So today, I'm going to tell you how I got rid of the bitterness and the hatred in my life. But before I do, before I tell you how I got rid of the bitterness and the hatred in my heart, I want to mention the names of 4 girls. I want to mention the names of 4 little girls: Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Cynthia Wesley, and Carol Robinson. On September 15, 1963, 18 days after Dr. King's famous "I Have a Dream" speech, a powerful bomb exploded in the basement of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. The bomb contained 19 sticks of dynamite and was placed in the church by the Birmingham chapter of the Ku Klux Klan, better known as the KKK. Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Cynthia Wesley, and Carol Robinson were killed. In addition to killing Addie Mae, Cynthia, Carol, and Denise, 22 people were injured in the bomb blast. Don't forget that they were at a church getting ready to attend a Sunday school class. Denise McNair was 11 years old. Addie Mae, Carol, and Cynthia were 14 years old. The 14-year-old girls were 1 year younger than my mom when my mom gave birth to me. I wanted to mention their names because after they were killed, a man said, when all of these, and you can just fill in the blank, it'll start with the letter N. When all of these leave town, you will never hear the names of these, and you can fill in the blank again. I hope we will never, ever forget Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robinson, and Denise McNair. The bomb, those 18 sticks of dynamite, awakened the nation to the deadly consequences of hate. Dr. King spoke at the memorial for 3 of the girls. They did not have the service for Addie Mae Collins because her 12-year-old sister, Sarah, was seriously injured, blinded in her right eye and partially blinded in her left eye when the bomb exploded. As Dr. King was leaving the service, a reporter stuck a microphone in his face and said, Dr. King, tell me something. Don't you just hate the people who did this? Now remember this. I was a young boy being raised by my grandmother in a little tiny town in Louisiana that sat right in the middle of a big cotton field. We did not have running water, and we had only recently had electricity installed in our house. I did not have a lot of direction in my life. What Dr. King said that day became a defining moment in my life. We watched the memorial service on a black and white TV at our school. Our school was a 1st through 12th grade school. The name of the school was Allen High School for Negroes. Think about that for just a second. Allen High School for Negroes. Dr. King's message that day, his message at the memorial service, was a simple message titled, "A Love That Forgives." A love that forgives. When the reporter asked Dr. King if he hated the people who did this, I remember hoping that Dr. King would say something different. I was hoping he would give us freedom to act out, the freedom to do something stupid. Dr. King paused, looked at the large crowd that was gathered for the memorial. He looked at the grieving families, looked at the reporter, and this is what he said. He said, "We live in a nation created in honor, respect, and love. A nation built on the idea that we are all created equal. When you live in a nation founded in the principles of love, to hate anyone is just a burden that is too much for me to bear. To hate anyone is a burden too much for me to bear. For us to hate anyone should be a burden too much for us to bear." Finally, I've spent most of my adult life studying Dr. King. I've read just about every book and watched many documentaries about him. I even met one of his lieutenants, Congressman John Lewis, in 2018. And I asked Congressman Lewis, what was Dr. King's mission in life? I wanted to know, what was his mission? When I asked the question, Congressman Lewis looked deep into my eyes. He appeared to be searching for my expression as he shared Dr. King's mission with me in a way that no one else could. Congressman Lewis told me that Dr. King's mission was twofold. He said, first, Dr. King wanted to make sure that a civil rights bill was passed, a bill that would outlaw discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin, a civil rights bill. Then Congressman Lewis told me that Dr. King spoke with him about slavery, talked with him about living in a segregated society, the inequities that surrounded Blacks in schools, the inequities of a sharecropping system, the inequities of housing and land ownership. He said Dr. King talked with him about the terrible burden many Black Southerners inherited in the work of hate. Dr. King told him about being arrested more than 30 times, jailed in Montgomery, Alabama, for driving 30 miles per hour in a 25-mile-per-hour zone. Now, I want you to think about that for just a second. Arrested and booked in jail for driving 5 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. With all of that, Congressman Lewis said that Dr. King's second mission in life was to lay down the burden of hatred and redeem the soul of America. Lay down the burden of hatred and redeem the soul of America. So the theme of the day is this: life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? There, I believe, is your answer. Lay down the burden of hatred and redeem the soul of America. Or, as Pope Francis said, extinguish the fire of hatred. That's all I have for you today. I want to wish all of you peace, patience, and kindness. Thank you.
Anybody who knows the YMCA knows that we're a safe place for kids. In fact, ask anyone about their first experience with the Y, and they'll probably share a childhood memory. The Y is likely where they learned how to swim, or first played organized sports. It's where they spent their afternoons after school, or it was their first job. Youth development is in our DNA. It's the first thing we ever were. Before the big buildings or catchy song, we were a place for young people. When the YMCA was founded 177 years ago, our very first program was a teen program. But it was more than just a program. It was a leadership development program. Our commitment to youth development is as strong now as it was then. But how does this commitment to youth show up today? For us, this means ensuring every family and child in Snohomish County knows that the Y isn't just a safe place to be, but a place to become something. A change maker, a community leader, a professional, a big sister. The Y is where 13-year-olds discover their agency through programs like Counselors in Training and Leaders in Training. It's where high school students stand up and find their voice through programs like Youth in Government. The Y is where youth from every background discover and master their potential through programs like My Achievers. Every child deserves a caring adult role model. Beginning this year, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Snohomish County will have a presence at all 6 YMCA locations, ensuring that all adolescents who are without this relationship will be paired up and set up for success. From cradle to career, the Y is a lot of things to a lot of people, but at the end of the day, we're a leadership organization. We create leaders at every life stage, but especially from a young age, for the benefit of us all.
Good morning. My name is Peyton Toon, and I do have the privilege of serving as your president and CEO here at the YMCA of Snohomish County. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We so wish that we could have gathered in person, but as you've heard already in the powerful words of our speakers, we would not allow distance to separate us from this really important day. Now, although I've only been here 2 years, I am getting used to the Pacific Northwest, and I gotta tell you, I actually do love winter. I know it sounds strange, that might not be very popular, but I kind of love the darkness. There's something nice and refreshing about 4 seasons and having a time when it's dark in the morning and dark at night, and you can be indoors and really explore the great indoors. And although I do love to hike and run and be outside, when the weather isn't great, this might not surprise you, I find myself at my local YMCA to avoid the weather. And just the other night at my local Y, there was a group of teenagers. They were running on the track, and they weren't exercising. They were actually having a foot race, and it was really funny. They were videotaping each other, and presumably to post it on TikTok or something like that. And I was caught in that moment watching them because there were about 9 of them, and it was every stripe of diversity of our community. Some white kids, some African American kids, some Latinx kids, some Native kids, some Asian kids, boys and girls, and they were laughing. They were laughing so hard. And you always know when you're a part of the best parts of a community when you're around laughter. And there's so much laughter at the YMCA. And this didn't really surprise me. As a former teen director, I know firsthand the power of youth work and the YMCA. But as I watched these kids and I reflected, in this moment, they didn't know hate. All they knew was friendship and equality. And that's one of the things that the YMCA does, is it brings kids together before they learn bad habits and bad thoughts. And they don't know any different. As was said in the video, one of the first programs of the YMCA was a teen program. And we have a teen in our history books. At the time, he was just a boy, and then he became an adolescent. His name was Martin. He was a very special man. Martin Luther King Jr., long before he was Dr. King, was a Y kid. He was a member of the Leaders Club and Youth in Government at the Butler Street YMCA on Auburn Avenue in Atlanta, Georgia, the same street that he was born on. He was a Y kid like any other kid. He learned to step up and speak with his peers. He played basketball. He probably got in some scraps. And though we're not going to take credit for this amazing legacy, we do want to learn from his work and find out what could be instructive. Now, this was the 1940s. Not exactly a time of great racial harmony in our country. And it really was not common for kids of color and white kids to get together. But they did. And they did it at the Y. Now, we were then and are now an imperfect nation. And the YMCA is not perfect either, but we've always been an organization that pushes ourselves to do better. Now, the picture on your screen is a swimming pool, and it's not in Snohomish County. It is a YMCA swimming pool, and it's in Phoenix, Arizona. And what do you notice about that picture? There's boys and girls swimming in a pool together, kids of color, white kids. That picture was taken in 1953. 1953. Phoenix, or Arizona, is the 48th state in this nation, and they were the last state to ratify Martin Luther King Day in this country. But the Y in that state understood the importance of bringing people together. Now, one of the stories I marvel at with Dr. King has to do with another luminary in our collective struggle for justice and equality. Dr. King had a profound impact on another man, and he wasn't even an American. He's a man who lived a world away from Dr. King, a South African. This is a man who sadly died last month. His name was Bishop Desmond Tutu. And though I clearly never met Dr. King, as a young grad student in Texas, I had the chance to not only meet Bishop Tutu, but spend time with him one afternoon. Bishop Tutu credits Dr. King with teaching him about what Senator Lovick mentioned as a love that forgives. Bishop Tutu taught me that day, when you know better, you do better. And he told me this story. He said, when a pile of cups is tottering on the edge of the table, and you warn that they will crash to the ground, in South Africa, you are blamed when that happens. When your warning was meant to cause people to move away, to move the cups away from the edge of the table, and to move those cups away from disaster. In his eyes, when you know better, you do better. And we have been given warnings. We hear them all the time. But are we only hearing the warnings? Or are we also recognizing that it's not only our opportunity, but our responsibility to respond when our community is asking for a positive change, to do the right thing? And Dr. King did respond, and so did Bishop Tutu. Bishop Tutu was a Black South African. He lived under brutal laws of apartheid his entire life, almost his entire life. Heavily influenced by the teachings of Dr. King, Tutu was not only instrumental in the release of Nelson Mandela, the abolishment of apartheid policies in South Africa, but also, and maybe most importantly, the healing of tensions between Black and white South Africans through the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions. While Tutu was chairing these grueling public sessions, he was actually ailing with prostate cancer. And once again, with his unique brand of godly humor, and if you know Bishop Tutu, he's very funny, his humor proved to be good medicine. And he said, the best kind of healer is a wounded healer, because he has empathy for the wounded and the wounder. That is a love that forgives. It could not escape you to listen to Bishop Tutu, the profound impact of the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King on Bishop Tutu. And that too is instructive. As teachers of young people, we have a powerful opportunity to shape the lives of the next generation. It's our opportunity, and it's also our responsibility. We never know how in our teaching of the next generation, we can leave a profound impact for years to come, possibly continents away. Okay, now some YMCA stuff. You know I'm the CEO, and I couldn't talk to you without asking you and giving you some opportunities to get involved. Senator Lovick said that he's standing on the shoulders of giants, and that is such a powerful way to put it. But we are also inheritors of a great legacy of service in the YMCA. I like to say that we're sitting under trees that long ago someone else planted, and we owe a great debt of gratitude for their service. Dr. King said, everybody can be great, and because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and your verb agree. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. Now, the YMCA is a charity. We're run by volunteers. In fact, the ratio of volunteers to staff is about 5 to 1. We could not do the work of the YMCA without volunteers. Our board chair, Matt, at the end of our time together, is going to give you an opportunity on Monday to volunteer with the YMCA. If you've never volunteered with the Y, I want to encourage you to do so, because we really need your help. And as I said, the YMCA is a charity. We're not only the largest social service nonprofit in Snohomish County, but we're collectively the largest social service nonprofit in the United States. I like to say to my staff and volunteers, we're a big deal. We have a commitment that no one is turned away based on an inability to pay. And one of the ways we keep this commitment is through our annual campaign. Now, every Y in the country does an annual campaign, and they're all very similar. And honestly, the annual campaign is amazing. It's awesome. This is my 21st annual campaign. It's completely volunteer led, and every dollar given to the annual campaign goes to serve those in need. It's an act of love, agape love of mankind. Caring for the children of strangers is an act of social solidarity. It's an act of social justice. When you give to the YMCA annual campaign, you're ensuring that families in need of childcare can go to work and earn a paycheck and care for their family. That young people can engage in values-based sports programs where they can learn to love their classmates regardless of the color of their skin or where they've come from. Children who can't swim, they learn to swim. But more importantly, they develop courage and grit and overcome fear for a lifetime. Teens can participate in programs like My Achievers, which aims to send kids of color and first-generation immigrants to college. Leaders Club, where teens learn how to take charge of themselves and aspire to take charge of their community. Youth in Government, where teens learn to find their voice and have conflict with civility. Could use a little bit of that these days. And amazing programs like Big Brothers Big Sisters, which ensures that youth who need a one-on-one mentor are able to have that caring adult role model in their life so they can thrive in adolescence and become great young adults and then adults. And this is just a sample of the amazing programs that your YMCA provides to all youth in Snohomish County, regardless of their ability to pay. By giving to the annual campaign, you enable the YMCA to add 13 new youth workers. These are full-time professional do-gooders that we can deploy in our communities. This is aquatics directors and sports directors and teen directors and childcare directors that then go out in the community and run these vital programs. So your donation to the campaign enables that. So on your screen is a QR code. If you want to pull out your cell phone and scan it, it'll take you to a website. If you feel moved, I encourage you and ask you to consider to give. If you're watching today and you belong to a local Y, please know that your gift goes 100% to your Y. 100% of annual campaign dollars go to support access. It doesn't pay for coffee. It doesn't pay for the towels at your YMCA. It doesn't pay for the light bill. It all goes to access for all. And you will never know how your act of kindness will transform the life of someone else. You don't know what they'll become. If you've never given to the Y, I want to humbly ask you to join us. By giving to the campaign, you are answering in part what Dr. King asked us, which is one of life's most persistent and urgent questions is, what are you doing for others? By giving to them, you're very much continuing in this legacy of service. The legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, a Y kid, one of our own. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being with us this morning. It is my honor and my privilege to introduce our next speaker. She is our immediate past chair of the YMCA of Snohomish County, my former boss, my good friend. She just flew in last night from my home state, the great state of Texas. Please join me in welcoming Phyllis Turner Brim to reflect on what the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. means to her. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're good. Good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning. When Peyton asked me to speak on this program, I was honored and humbled to be offered a significant role in this event, honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and continuing his legacy of service. I am truly thrilled to be here. Dr. King's quote that serves as a theme for our weekend is, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Using this as my foundation, I take as my topic, service as a way of life. We can all look to Dr. King as an outstanding example of one who demonstrated that service can be a way of life. Even so, as is my practice, and as I encourage others to do, I look to those I know personally and intimately to be role models for how I live my life. In this regard, my inspiration for this topic comes from the example of my parents, Lily Turner and the late Reverend Virgil Turner. My parents served. They served people, they served neighborhoods, they served their family, they served communities. They overcame great odds and resisted societal pressures to be self-interested at every turn. The pressure to get mine and let others get theirs, to be focused solely on their lives, their success, and the success of their children. They resisted, even though some would say they would have been justified in doing so. My parents were born during the Great Depression in the rural, segregated South of the United States, in the state of Arkansas. Understaffed and under-resourced schools, poverty, Jim Crow, racism, and discrimination were ever present. Dad dropped out of high school to join the military, which had just recently been allegedly desegregated. Later returning to finish high school and attend college on the GI Bill. Mom was a teenage unwed mother who, if many of the good Christian folk in the town had had their way, would not have been able to attend college on scholarship. In their formative years, and on every hand and at every turn, there were reasons to be bitter, to focus on self, to live out resentments of the prevailing system of racial oppression and those who perpetuated it. Yet out of this environment and these circumstances came two people who were driven to make their lives and the lives of others better, to make the world a better place, to give back, to stand for justice in the face of injustice, and who embraced Dr. King's notion of the beloved community. Two people who served. Remaining in every community, school, organization, and environment where my parents lived, worked, or played is a legacy of their service. In the south suburbs of Chicago, they established and led community services like Head Start, Meals on Wheels, Women, Infant, and Children, and a host of other programs and initiatives designed to uplift underserved communities. They also contributed to faith-based organizations such as St. Bethel Missionary Baptist Church and the Bethel Community Center. In the early 90s, my father served as the executive director of the Arkansas AIDS Foundation and subsequently co-founded an organization focused on educating Black and Brown communities on how to support their own health. During the same time, my mother established and led the very first Head Start program in Lonoke County, Arkansas. They were both instrumental in reinvigorating Lonoke's George Washington Carver Alumni Association, honoring the legacy of Lonoke's colored high school, which was ultimately closed after integration. And it might well have been forgotten if not for the tireless efforts of a few dedicated folks, including my mom and dad. Now, the Carver Alumni Association is a pillar of the Lonoke, Arkansas community and provides scholarships and other supports to students striving to academically excel. Again, they served. The ultimate legacy of service as a way of life that Virgil left and that Lily is still building is a commitment to service instilled in their children. Me and my sisters, Valerie Turner and Felicia Epps. All of us have a service orientation. I could spend hours extolling the service projects, big and small, that my sisters have undertaken. So I'll just mention a few. Felicia is an attorney, Marine Corps veteran, and academic who who has spent much of her professional career helping underserved communities receive fair treatment from a broken and complex legal system. Now, as Dean of the Law School of the University of North Texas, Dallas, she is increasing access to legal education to non-traditional students. Valerie, after having devoted close to 30 years of service in public education, seeking needed change from the inside, has taken up the mantle of leadership for the Carver Alumni Association in Lone Oak and is driving positive change through activism and engagement in the Lone Oak community. Then there's me. Admittedly, I have not always leaned into the service orientation that is clearly part of my DNA. Even so, as I look back on the arc of my existence, I see my parents' invisible and sometimes not so invisible hand nudging me towards service opportunities. As a youngster, during summers, I was required to volunteer in one or more of the programs that my parents managed. As I grew older, I always had at least one or more service projects where I invested my time. Mostly, there was no theme or programmatic scheme to my various service interests. I only instinctively knew that if someone asked you to support a good cause, if you could do it, then you should do it. In college, I participated in outreach encouraging African American and Black students to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and math. In law school, I supported various legal clinics, services for indigent clients. In the follow-on years, there were a host of other projects and endeavors too numerous to mention. This brings us to 2009, when the then CEO of the Snohomish County YMCA, Scott Washburn, and the then Chief Development Officer, Scott Sadler, presented me with the opportunity to join the board of the Y. I said yes. Little did I know that that was the beginning of a 12+ year relationship that would culminate in me serving as chair of the board and being before you today. In full transparency, I must admit, I had little idea what I was getting myself into when I said yes to the Scotts. They were very persuasive. My service to the Y, however, transformed my life in some unexpected ways. When I joined the Y board, like many other people, my view was that it was primarily a swim and gym. What I learned and experienced to my delight, and is just shared with you by Peyton, was that the Y isn't just a place, it's a movement. It's a movement devoted to youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. When I was the association chair of the annual campaign that Peyton just discussed, I had the opportunity to visit with people who shared their transformational Y stories. I heard moving stories of how the Y has made a difference in so many lives. People who felt invisible were seen. Those who had been excluded were included. Those who had been forgotten were remembered. Like my mom and dad, the Y invests and serves people, neighborhoods, and communities. At the Y, and I quote, "We use our knowledge to develop stronger, more integrated communities, provide support for people and families, and promote positive change for all." I acknowledge that the Y hasn't always gotten it right. There will always be ways to improve and to grow, to be more inclusive, to be more equitable, to agitate for more positive change. What I can say is that in my experience, the Snohomish Y, led by its board, executive team, and numerous staff and volunteers, is unequivocally devoted to serving Snohomish County and moving the community towards Dr. King's ideal beloved community. This quest for the ideal was on full display in the way the Y managed and continues to manage through the pandemic. I know because I was there. In the vernacular of the movement, this is my Y story. But this is not the end of my Y story. Now that I've moved to Houston, I look forward to affiliating with the local communities, with local community service organizations, including and especially the local Y, as I think about my legacy and how I will leave the world better than I found it. I recall Dr. King's quote, a copy of which hung in my office for over a decade. And you did hear this from Peyton as well. Everybody can be great because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and your verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. Here, Dr. King challenges all of us to find a way to serve, especially those who strive to be great. Greatness comes through service, and service can and should be a way of life. As I leave the podium, I would like to leave you with the lyrics of one of Dr. King's favorite songs. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or song, if I can show somebody how they're traveling wrong, then my living shall not be in vain. Thank you.
Wow, wasn't that a powerful message? I want to thank our speakers, Mel, Janet, Phyllis, who traveled up from Texas to give us that message, and certainly Senator Lubbock for the powerful words and inspiration to get out there. It's an honor to be able to hear from all of them. Wonderful experience. And what a wonderful breakfast that was we had today. Oh, didn't get that edited out. Just kidding. We wanted to have breakfast with you, and next year we hope we will. We are certainly going to plan on it. We hope all of you will join us again. Tell your friends and neighbors to join us. A couple of more thank yous. Once again, thanks Coastal Community Bank. We appreciate your sponsorship. I want to do a shout out to the Martin Luther King Jr. Committee, made up of the YMCA staff, for the fantastic job and planning they did putting this together. Again, to our inspirational speakers. But as Martin Luther King would say, this has to happen every day. So we'd like to invite you to continue expressing his vision. We know we need that more than ever in these wild days we've been living, by doing what we call taking a day on. What's a day on? A day on for service. You can do this Monday at one of our 6 branches. We have service projects established for each one. And if you'd like to get involved, simply go to the YMCA website, should be on the screen, to register and come join us. So with that, I want to say thank you to all of you joining us. Have a great day. We will see you next year. Now get out there and help your neighbor. God bless.